thrilling 2020 Oscar-winning story of a father's struggle with his daughters here in the film Hair Love is the focus of this stimulating conversation with the production team at Lion Forge, who took home the Academy Award with this, their first film. Now, this session will feature Carl Reed and David Stewart II, founders of Lion Forge Animation and passionate advocates of diversity in media. They'll be joined by Everett Downing Jr., who co-directed the short film, as well as Here Love's story artist and illustrator, Pearl Lowe. The session will be moderated by Jamaica's very own Kenya Mattis, co-founder and CEO of Listen Me Caribbean. Among her many accolades, Kenya was voted one of MIP TV's top 50 producers to watch back in 2020. But before I hand it over to Kenya, I must remind you that the live chat feature is active so you can pose your questions to the panelists. Okay, take it away, Kenya. Let's go.
Hello, and welcome to the Hair Love Journey panel, the creation of Hair Love from scripts to screen. I am Kenya Mattis. I'm the CEO of Listen Me Caribbean, an animation studio based in Jamaica. And I have the immense, awesome privilege of speaking to the creators of one of the most groundbreaking short films that we've seen over the past couple of years. And that is, of course, Hair Love. Written and directed by Matthew Cherry, it's the simple and timeless story of father-daughter love, a dad trying to comb his daughter's hair for the very first time, but we all experienced it as our story. And it went on to receive phenomenal success. And I just wanted to, first of all, thank all the panelists I'm about to introduce for taking the time to come and talk to us today. We have with us today none other than Mr. Everett Downing Jr., who is an Oscar-winning director, story artist, and animator. Fun fact, his connection to the story starts out with Twitter, so I'm definitely going to ask him to talk to us about that. Then there's Carl Reed, an Academy Award-winning producer who serves as Polarity's Chief Creative Officer and President of Lion Forge Animation. With him, we have David Stewart II, who is an Academy Award-winning producer who owns and operates multiple companies. And they both have a mission of creating, discovering, and amplifying diverse voices. And fun fact, Carl and Dave have been working together on various ventures for, shall we say how many years? I'm going to ask them to mention that as well. And then we have the Rose Among Thorns, Pearl Lowe. She is an Afro-Asian story artist, comic artist. And among other things, Pearl is currently storyboarding at Cartoon Network. Fun fact, her graphic novel in 2018, Tension, was also a comic about embracing one's roots. And that Kickstarter campaign also has a lot to do with her story here today. And to everyone on the panel, I say welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask each person to tell us a bit more about themselves, and we're going to start off with Everett, actually. Mr. Downing Jr. himself. Tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got connected to the Hair Love project. I mean, how you discovered this story. Tell us the moment that this happened.
Hi, you heard my name is Everett Downing. I've been an animation professional for 20 years now. I got my start in feature animation working at Blue Sky Studios on the very first Ice Age, which is still very near and dear to my heart. I've been working in animation at several studios. I was at Blue Sky for 6 years, Pixar Animation for 7. I worked at Sony Pictures Animation. I did a stint at Paramount and at DreamWorks. And before I landed over at Netflix, and where I'm currently an executive producer on a original show that I created with my partner Patrick Harpin, my creative partner Patrick Harpin, and I got started on this crazy journey. I remember very distinctly seeing like when the Kickstarter hit, and I was just really excited about just the idea. I am a father of 2 girls. I was the one who kind of like was doing the hair in the family. So for me, it felt like, everything that they were trying to do felt like it really resonated with me. So I remember very distinctly, like I think it was the second or third day, the Kickstarter, I contributed to it, and I shot out an email through Kickstarter like, hey, I'm an animation professional. If you ever need any help, you know where to find me. Like, I would love to be able to do something on this. And I didn't hear anything from it. I'm sure Matt was like just swamped with replies, because I don't know if you guys know, the Kickstarter did okay. I think it did all right. And a few months later, I was approached by Karen Tolliver, who was the producer on the project at the time, and we were actually working together. I was at Sony, and we were both. I was working with her in developing something for them, and she asked me if I wanted to do some consulting on the project. And for me, it was like, I was like, yes, I'd love any way I can help this project out. I want to see the representation. I want to see Black fathers portrayed in a different way. Like, I want all this to happen. So I sat down with the team. It was, Matt. I was there with Matt, Karen. There were a few others, and I just kind of basically went through. I asked them a bunch of questions. You want to do this 2D animation, 3D animation? Like, how long is it? I read the script. How you want to handle the hair. I asked them all this question, and I gave them feedback. Like, hey, 2D might be easier. Like, if you can represent the hair in a way that can feel really great and artful and beautiful without breaking the bank, which is 3D. Like, I just answered a bunch of questions. And when I was done, I kind of said, thank you very much. And I thought that was the end of the conversation. And about like a week and a half, 2 weeks later, Karen contacted me back. She's like, Matthew, really loved everything you had to say. I know you're really busy, but would you be interested in maybe co-directing? And I think I maybe hesitated for a second, just to because I was stunned. And then I just said, yes, I want to be a part of this. So that's kind of how I got involved in the whole thing. And everything else was it was a wild ride from there on.
That's amazing. I mean, just the fact that it started out from this strong connection and it sort of ended up where you were working on this story, I think is an amazing story. Carl, was that also your experience? How did you get involved in this? And tell us a bit more about your background leading up to this moment when you got connected with the project.
Definitely. And David and myself got involved in the same way. So I'll tell half the story. So my background, I started out actually in my late teens. I was a comic artist, and so I was an illustrator. Then we started a small agency here in town in St. Louis to both kind of put some structure around our freelance services, and it just expanded into toy design and animation and anything else that would pay the bills at the time, right? But that time really gave us experience in working in a ton of different formats and a ton of different things. And so over the years, we just started working on more fun projects. Around that time, we collaborated with David. He was working on a similar kind of venture. He was doing some photography, and we collaborated on a project, and it was just such a fun experience. We decided let's kind of merge what we're doing, and we wound up working together on an agency for a number of years, doing some more of the same on the creative side. Which later afterwards, and I'll let Dave tell his part, but I moved out to LA after Dave did and started working in broadcast animation, mostly on the production side. Did literally everything, every little piece of the process I did at some point. And from there, I had a son, and I was like, I don't know if the LA traffic and not seeing our works for me and my wife the way it's set up. So we moved back home to St. Louis just in time. Dave was exiting a venture at the time. And it was like, so what are we doing next? And comics. So we started Line Forge Comics, which again, we had the similar focus about kind of amplifying this new perspectives in content. And later that bloomed, as that started to grow, we were like, okay, it's time to get into animation. So we spun off the animation side in 2018. And right around that time that we were trying to, that we spooled it out, we planned to announce in early 2019. So we're looking around for a short to get involved in. And lo and behold, Hair Love came on our fell on our doorstep. And I'll let Dave go ahead and finish the story as he tells his background.
So Dave, you mean to tell me that you were looking for your very first short at this point in time, and that's when you happened upon this project? Like,
oh, I mean, it's kind of one of those things. You know, God works in mysterious ways and pulls you in different directions. I mean, I started off, you know, probably the most circuitous route to get to where we are right now. I mean, I started off in photography, which led into doing production work, which is at the time we met Carl and we did some collaboration. And, you know, I did a short stint out in Hollywood and, you know, in the production field. And then ended up working in private equity for a short period of time and then getting back into media, which was where we partnered up. And again, trying to promote this new vision of, you know, doing content, you know, and at least initially in comics where we could, you know, promote and amplify, you know, diverse voices. And so, which, you know, in the comics industry are wholly underrepresented, as well as, you know, in the animation industry, as well as we've come to find out. And so, yeah, we decided to expand what we were doing on the comic side, get into animation. This project kind of came through a mutual relationship. So one of our business development guys, Jimmy Thomas, actually worked with Karen Tolliver's husband under Clarence Avon. And so Clarence had his premiere for The Black Godfather, and they were both there. They were talking, and Karen's, you know, told Jimmy and said, "Hey, I need help getting this project produced. And, you know, we have a short window. We need to get it done." And so, you know, we got in contact and, you know, I saw, you know, the work that was being done there. And of course, got familiarized with the story and the Kickstarter. And I was like, you know what, we got to get behind this. You know, it's speak to everything that we're kind of looking for in a project in terms of diversity of representation. But also I said, and Carl attested, I said, this is going to win an Oscar. I'm telling you right now. So we got to make sure that this thing happens. And so, yeah, so we got involved and, you know, and all the wonderful folks, you know, involved with it, you know, got it done, got it across the finish line, I think a day before it needed to go out. And, you know, Sony put in front of Angry Birds, and, you know, the rest is history from there.
So, I mean, you're entering this project from like a private equity / photography background. We have Carl Reed, who has this comic illustration, multiple production background. We have, you know, Everett, who is this, you know, director working with, you know, major studios. And then we have Pearl, who comes into this project. Where are you at this point in time, Pearl? What are you doing and how do you find out about this project?
Yeah, so similar to, I guess, or just with the Twitter connection, I had been working in animation for about 4 years. I was mostly in story. I was working at a lot of studios here in Vancouver. That's where I'm currently based. And I had also did some freelance work for some other short films. So I was kind of wanting to do a little bit more of that work. And I was also wanting to tell more of my stories. So I created my own kind of like autobiographical comic, Tension, which was also about like my personal experience growing up biracial, but also like dealing with my curly hair. I had made a Kickstarter of my own and I was trying to fundraise money to do printing, and someone who's a mutual friend of ours, Crystal Babbage, pledged to my Kickstarter and had received one of the books as an award. She was like, "Oh, do you mind if I pass this off to someone named Everett? I work with him. I think that he would really like reading it." And I said, "Oh yeah, for sure. Like definitely pass it off to him." Just because Everett also has daughters who are Asian and Black as well as myself. So yeah, so he read it and Crystal was like, "Yeah, he's looking currently for young Black female storyboard artists. If you're free, like I would love to connect you to." And so that happened, and it was all through Twitter. I mean, Crystal and I were Twitter friends. Everett and I met virtually after that. But even before that too, when Hair Love's Kickstarter was happening, I had newly followed Matthew Cherry on Twitter and he followed me back. And I was like, "Oh, this is really exciting." And then we started talking through DMs and he was saying like, "Oh, like I would really love to like work with you." And he sent me an early version of the script. And so I read that a bit and things kind of like faded a little bit because I know he got super busy and things were popping up. But it was really cool to kind of come back and like do like a 360 and be like, "Hey, like you're back here and here's another opportunity. Would you like to join the Hair Love team?" And I was like, "Yes, please." Yes, please.
That's really amazing. I mean, the power of course, social networking, crowdfunding, and interpersonal connection as well really speaks to, I guess, how this entire team, even beyond you guys on the call, assembled. And how I think, David, was it you were saying at one point that like describe the just the relevance of the voices behind this project in terms of like just the who's who, you know, in the community that was a part of this, and also like from your perspective, like what are some of the ingredients that go into the success of a project like this that goes on to not only, you know, reach people's minds but also win these awards, have so many views, and just be virally, you know, relevant across the globe?
I think there's a significance of this project, kind of, the project on the whole in terms of, being a representative project in the marketplace that shows, Black, culture, to others, as well as, shows us on the screen in animation. But, one thing I found, of us getting in the animation industry that was kind of shocking to me, and I think even beyond what I've experienced in the comics industry, is that, and I tell this story all the time. We went to our first kid screen, and literally, other than there was a contingency of Jamaican, people there. I think there was about 10 of them. Other than that, Carl and I were the only Black people there.
That's crazy to me.
And being in a room, where, we were in this large room and Netflix was presenting kind of what their tenets are for, what they're looking for kids animation. I'm looking around this room and I'm like, Carl, we're the only ones in this room. And he didn't believe me. I said, find me one other one, please. But it's really weird because you look at the industry, you have a lot of, you probably have a very high participation of women in the industry, but not a lot of people, persons of color in the industry, especially, African Americans and Blacks. And so when you look at this, in a lot of ways, this project was kind of a coming together of almost a good portion of the Black animation industry on one project. And I think that doesn't. I think it's really told, how much diversity was behind the scenes on this project, as well, which I think is very significant, from, the directing to the producing to, the storyboards and everything. And this, which is, quite an amazing feat, especially kind of in Hollywood. And so I think this kind of, in a lot of ways, kind of brought us together, and we're continually having conversations, looking for ways to, work for one another. But also, hopefully this inspires, new creatives to get their voices out there as well, because we need, and our courage and I want to see more participation of, Black and brown people, in this industry. And we're here to try to figure out ways to make that happen as well, through collaboration and things that we're doing.
I mean, I guess it's no accident that the first project that unites, really the Black contingent, if you will, of animators has so much to do with a topic that is so political, so personal, so meaningful as Black hair. And Carl, I really wanted to get, your view on just what was happening at the time and sort of when this came out and why you think this probably, resonated just when it did.
Well, personally, just like Everett, I have a Black daughter, and her hair is pretty much exactly like that. Like, oh my goodness, we've had battles. But outside of myself, there's been a natural progression as people have gotten more choice in the content that they're selecting. They have turned away in a certain way from traditional media. And they've gone to the Kickstarters, to the YouTubes, to places where there's a little more lower barrier of entry for new creatives, or for content that fits either what they can relate to, or is interesting enough in that it's different and they haven't seen it before. And I think as the streaming channels have proliferated, and as Hollywood has recognized this, the audiences have matured and have realized that they are in control a little bit more of that content. Not all the way yet, but but more and more in control of the content. And so you've seen, more LGBT content. You've seen more Black and minority and different underserved audiences having content, and more it's kind of forcing the major players to either step up and start producing more, or get not taken down, but get out produced by independent creators. And so we're in a time where it's very interesting, and we're able to have a conversation about Black content, when before the notion that Black content and diverse content period would be confined to our shores and a niche release is no longer the truth. Black Panther has proved that. Get Out, time and time again, is getting proven that internationally, they will purchase and watch content with starring and created by people of color. And even here we're watching, Korean shows on Netflix and things like that. So we're in a new world. And I think Hair Love was at the tip of that zeitgeist at the time, and able to really take full advantage. And it was the right time and the right message and high quality creative to capture that moment.
Absolutely. And I mean, Everett, I actually want to bring you in here and talk about that high quality creative. I mean, your role as, one of the directors, of this project. I imagine that I'm a part of that role, apart from there's one side, which is sort of interpreting the vision of the writer, but then there's also bringing, sort of this team together. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was, first of all, just an amazing opportunity. And for me, like, because the subject is like very close to my heart, I wanted to kind of make sure, like, hey, I want to leverage some of my contacts, try to see if I can bring in as much talent as possible, because I really wanted this thing, like, I really wanted to be able to like help Matthew achieve his vision, and also like, showcase some talent that, potentially can not really be ignored, but can be looked over, right? So it was really awesome to be able to kind of turn to, these are like a lot of my coworkers, like people that whose work that I've always been just impressed and inspired by, and being able to kind of tap them and bring them into this like really special project. And it really didn't take a lot, you just kind of, a lot of them were like aware of the project, just seeing kind of potentially what we were trying to do. It was enough to kind of like, everyone was like on board, they were ready to do this. So, and from that point on, I think the biggest thing is like, Matthew, he knew what he wanted. And for me, like the challenge was like, okay, how am I going to translate this? Like, how am I going to be able to translate this in a way? So I really got to flex my animation muscles, right? Like, because I've been doing it for a while. Like, I know the process, and I've been on good and bad productions, so I really pay attention to both. It's like,
and the power of collaboration as well, because it's really a community project is sort of what it feels like.
Yes, I find that kind of the more open that you are, like in that approach, if you more collaborative you are, the better the product that comes out, because you might have an idea and someone else might have something that's really great that, hey, you know what, like separately, maybe they don't work, but if you pair some of those ideas, something even greater can come out of it. So, and it was really fantastic. It was great challenge, like, working with 6-Point Harness and working with a lot of the artists that were on the project, and Mercury came in later. They did some amazing stuff. So,
I mean, we're talking to many, Caribbean creatives who are watching this, and, they have ideas of their own, and they're like, yo, I can't afford to pay people, but I really think that I'm working on something that could really take off. And then what you're sharing is sort of how you were able to connect with your network, because the project was so powerful, and everyone just wanted to see it happen, that we all collectively sort of birthed it. And
absolutely.
Pearl is a part of this process, and you sort of come in, Pearl, as a storyboard artist. But there's something that I think is so powerful about what you are sharing, which is the importance of telling your story, because there are many individual, creatives who are watching at this point, and I'd love to know what you would say to them about, how it is that you doing your personal project made this sort of come together, and in terms of having it connect with you and you connect with the team as well. And you're muted. Wait,
Yeah,
you're
sorry,
not.
the host muted me.
Okay.
But it is really important. And I think that was something that I had to learn over time. I think, when you're new to the industry and you're just trying to get your footing, you're like just trying to do whatever like the script tells you to, or, just trying to like do the best you can with whatever you have. And sometimes you forget to create your own stuff on the side, whether you don't have time or energy, like that's real. But I think that I was starting to kind of feel like I really wanted to tell my own stories because I had something to say, and that's that led me to creating tension in my own personal comic. But I think I think the message that I guess I want to tell people is that like it's worth investing in your own voice. I think that people may, like artists in particular, may feel like, oh no one wants to like hear that, or oh it might not be relatable. I think some people who were like critiquing Hair Love being like, oh I don't know if that's going to be relatable because like Carl was saying like, oh it's really niche, like that kind of experience. But actually, and Karen Tolliver had said something that was like that resonated with me really strongly, is that the more specific a story, the more universal it becomes. And I really took that to heart. And I think that, through doing that, you find other like-minded people who see themselves in your story and in their perspective. And, it gives them courage to tell their own stories, and you create something really beautiful from it. And, I feel like I stand behind it really strongly, just because, the creation of tension is what led to me connecting with Everett and, being able to be on this team, and to also have that experience of like fully putting myself into a story that I never had before previously. Like, wow, this is such a unique experience of a young Black girl. I've had this where a parent didn't know what to do with my hair. Like, like it was so relatable to me. And it was so nice to be able to be in that position,
But also like, honestly, the balls it takes for you to put what you think might be a niche story out as a Kickstarter campaign. You have no idea how it's going to fare. You know what I mean? And you're sort of just bearing your soul. So for you to have the courage to do that, and for it to then lead to other things, I guess the thing is you just never know what can happen.
Exactly. And I think that's the exciting part too. You never know what's going to happen. Something might just like grow, and like whatever was saying about like the collaboration process too, like you just get all these people coming onto the idea that you like, and it just pluses it up in ways that you may never have thought it could like grow to. And that's just so exciting. So
absolutely. So now I want to talk about something that might be a bit controversial. I'm going to ask you a question, David. Money, because you're the private equity man on this panel. Now, a lot of people in the Caribbean, the creative industries, animation is a very risky business, and to really take your time and your money and invest, and for you to put your money where your mouth is, and to partner with Carl to work on, starting this studio was a huge risk. Like, what gave you the confidence that, this is something that you definitely wanted to invest in? Because at the time, you made that decision before there was a Hair Love. So what are some of those factors that let you say, yeah, this is something I want to put my money on?
Well, sometimes you have to invest in yourself at the end of the day, and in your own creative talents and stuff. And, you do it at the level that you can. Pearl went out and, invested in herself and started the Kickstarter to get her book going and things. And, Matthew invested in himself and putting out his Kickstarter and getting it rolling, and, unless we're doing those things, it's just going to be, sitting on the shelf, somewhere, and, for us, part of that too is, looking at, when you have a project, especially if, something of size and scale, you try to find good partners as well that have a common vision that you can work together, that you can collaborate together with. Everything doesn't necessarily have to have an extreme cost. Yes, you hear about animation costs all the time. Disney throws out, or even Sony throws out these budget numbers of like Spider-Verse, $110 million, $120 million. Like, oh my God, but I mean, there are things that you can find on YouTube where it's, one guy, in his skills, putting together a nice animated short, or, a small group of guys that have a common vision that want to, collaborate and partner, together to put together stuff. So, there's opportunities to do things that I think at various levels, and it's all about, getting something done and getting something out there, any way you can. And I would say there's no greater time than now, in a lot of ways, for you to do it at a relatively inexpensive cost because of technology. Rewind back 20 years ago. I mean, you didn't have the computing horsepower to do it, but also too, you have a way to get it out, through social media, to build a fan base, build a popularity around it. And, those are the key drivers to, finding others that want to, come on board and help you to support that vision, whether it's a studio, whether it's other investors, whether it's, even, crowdsource funding. So there's, tons of opportunities out there. It's just a matter of, like I said, kind of, keeping your vision in mind and kind of finding a way to, utilize the tools that are out there to see it to fruition.
And it just sounds like what you're saying also is, use what you have, start where you are, do what you can. And then from there, which is Pearl's story, as well, it can grow and sort of mushroom into more as you touch other people with what it is that you're doing.
Exactly.
And Carl, and I know that David and Carl, you both work very closely together. But Carl, what is also very interesting for me about Lionforge is the fact that, like studios in the Caribbean, we're operating in a space where it's not a major animation industry and hub. One of the biggest things you'll hear, persons in the Caribbean say is that there is no sort of industry here. But your studio started, it wasn't in LA, it wasn't in New York. Tell us about where your studio was and why you put it where it was, and how that sort of ended up, where it is today.
Aside from being from St. Louis, David and I are both from St. Louis. But aside from that, if you go back again a decade ago, you would be looked at crazy if you said that Atlanta would be the number one place to film films. And nowadays, that's the reality. More than LA, more than New York. And so also with the pandemic has shown us, more and more through technology, we're able to collaborate from anywhere. And actually to compete, we're going to have to be a little more nimble in those regards. So, there's a lot of advantages to being in St. Louis. For one, an animator or a illustrator or a writer can afford to live a life without going from check to check. Cost of living. We don't necessarily have the weather of the beaches all the time, but we do get snow if you like that. So I'm trying to get everyone to, come on and move to St. Louis. And I'm sure that you guys in Jamaica have an even more compelling offer to artists and animators. Hey, the cost of living on less of a salary, you could even live 10 times better than you could. You don't have to be 5 people up in an apartment and just to survive.
Absolutely.
So, there's a ton of benefits. And just like, in technology, they had to start outsourcing to Asia, Eastern Europe, because as the needs grew, the talent just wasn't there to justify those needs. And so right now we're in a time where, talent is being grabbed up as quick as it appears. And so we're going to have to look everywhere and develop talent wherever it is. And hopefully we can do that in St. Louis. Hopefully we can entice some of you West Coasters and some of the East Coasters and some of these folks from the islands.
Or hopefully we could have, a half of the year in St. Louis, half of the year in the Caribbean.
I like the sound of it. I like the sound of it. But when we don't have to, when we can do pitches on Zoom, when we can talk distribution remotely, and everyone does the markets, so it's no longer a great need to be in these places, especially the pandemic has shown that you can still operate and have a business without that.
And you mentioned pitches, and I'm very happy you did. Talk to me a bit about that. People must be pitching you ideas like crazy at this point in time. How do you choose what projects you work on or collaborate with?
I would say one of the biggest, there's two buckets of content.
Mm-hmm.
One is more determined by the market, and the market is either buyers like the Disneys, the Netflix, and folks that we have to place it with that have the actual pipes to air it. But another part of that market is consumers. Maybe the creator has an audience that's or a type of content that will resonate with a specific audience. And so those pieces of content, we don't even have to understand. If it makes a statement that is attractive to buyers, that is attractive to, or that is attractive to some sort of consumer base that is proven, that makes that conversation about what the content is easy. We have certain guidelines that we want to make sure happens. Again, our mission is we create content that challenges expectation and reflects the diversity of our audience. So we want to run everything through that lens. Is it exciting? Is it something that feels new? And does it reflect the diversity of our audience? And so those are the guidelines we follow. But then there's a whole nother bucket. There's a bucket of this is a really talented creator, and we want to work with them. And it's our job to kind of amplify what they create. We don't want to change the essence of that. We want to make it the most high quality thing that we can and enable them to produce that content. So those are kind of some of the things we consider as it goes along.
Got you. Are those the same values or criteria that you look at, David?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, as our company, kind of is set up, I think we have to foster, be there to help and as we can, and foster diverse talent. And Everett kind of talked about this earlier in terms of bringing on friends and colleagues and things, and he can attest because he's worked within kind of the animation system. And hopefully I'm not putting words in your mouth, Everett. But as far as I can tell, in terms of kind of diversity, the diversity of the industry is kind of lacking because people haven't been giving opportunities, and there's no and nobody at any of these studios is really focused on saying, hey, look, we really need to work and help foster minority talent because it's kind of few and far between. They're kind of looking at it like agnostically, and what ends up happening is that sometimes we're in these organizations, we're falling through the cracks for not given the opportunities as others, and you kind of look at the landscape at the end of the day, and it's mostly white. And so I feel like we have a little bit more of a calling to look at talent in different ways, see them for what they are and what their capability is and what their potential is, and do what we can to be supportive of them. I mean, Matthew, for his part, and Hair Love, I mean, he's a live action director. So in order for him to do the animation, they support him with other directorial talent, Everett and Bruce, to help support that, so you can see his vision and get a project done. I mean, in the same way that if we are in need of a certain voice or talent, so for example, we're working on a project that has a Black female lead character, and so this is something that's was created by Carl. We collaborated on it. So we're Black men, but we can't speak. We can speak to the Black experience, but not to the Black female experience. And so we want to make sure that we have that authenticity. So we've done some extra work to make sure that we put talent in the directorial seat that can speak to that experience, and making sure that they're supported, but again, it's talent that's really hard to find in the animation industry. So we're trying to do things like that and kind of do our part as well, to try to foster diversity, because, again, if if we're not going to do it and help each other out, nobody else is going to do it, for us, at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think although, we're talking about sorts of collaboration, it's also what you were mentioning before, which is investment. It's investing in ourselves, even though we may not have that amount of experience, so that we can hopefully level up and by collaborating, improve and get better. Everett, how about yourself? At this point in time, like, you must have so much going on. Are you even working on additional, when people throw stuff at what do you do, and how do you choose what projects to work on and that you connect with?
Well, I mean, as you can imagine, the project I'm working at Netflix is keeping me busy, but I'm really good at multitasking. Let me tell you. So there's definitely like ideas that I really would love to do. I have short ideas that I want to be able to like express myself with, and I think the biggest thing to kind of touch on the investment aspect of it again, it's like a lot of times I think there just gets to be a critical mass where it's just like you get to a point where you got to kind of invest in yourself, like when you realize that no one else is going to invest in you. And I was really inspired by a story of like young Steven Spielberg, how he basically would show up at the studio, and he would just he was not supposed to. He would sneak in, and he just kept showing up in the office, and like they finally just started giving him stuff. And what I took away from that is like, hey, you know what? If you just keep showing up and you show that like, hey, I'm going to do this whether you're here or not, people will respond to it. I'm going to tell you right now that the fact that I'm in this position right now is only because like there was, projects that I did not stop on, and you show that like there's a commitment and you're learning. Even when I was messing up, even when things weren't going well, I just kept at it. I tried to learn from them, and I kept trying to improve. And eventually you get to a critical mass, and people realize like, oh, you know what, this person is ready. And you just got to show that you're willing to put in that time. And I know, like, because now I'm in a position, I not only want to be able to tell my stories, but I'm continually on the lookout for talent, and I love to try to like get them to try to break that talent. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you know what? Like, I've been looking at this person, and they got really great ideas, and it's almost like when you get that door open, you kind of stick your foot in. You're like, well, no, hold on, I got a buddy. He's he's a really good chef or whatever. Like once that door is open, you try to gain in that talent, and you surprise people. I think you really surprise people because they're not expecting it.
And I think maybe sometimes even surprise yourself, because, and I don't know if this is the case. I mean, thank you so much for that insight. And Pearl, I'm wondering if for you, like when you're working on a project, do you have, as an artist, any self-doubt? Are you always like second guessing yourself when you're given an opportunity? Like, how do you choose like the projects that you say, okay, I'm going to say yes to this, if you do? And do you have that sort of mental, shifting that you have to do as an artist to give yourself the oomph to actually go through with it?
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's a muscle that you have to build when trying to, I don't know, I guess it's kind of like a boundary for what expectation for yourself of like, no, I really want to participate in these kind of stories. I think that what intentions you put out and you work towards, that becomes your reality eventually. And I think that, for a long time in my career anyway, I feel like I was like throwing whatever at the wall to see what stuck, like that was my method. And I think that, through that, I did a lot of learning about what I liked and what I, didn't like as much. And like, I tried to find stories and like projects that I really wanted to work on, like Hair Love. And I think that, I think there's like what Everett was saying, like there's a certain point where you're like, man, like I can't just keep going through the motion. For me anyway, I can't keep going through the motions, just working on project to project and not feeling like I'm bringing myself to it, or that the story doesn't resonate with me. Like that's just the type of artist that I am. So I feel like it took me a bit to get there though. At first, I don't think it was a priority for me. It was just kind of like, oh, I'm just gonna, like improve my technical skills or something like that. But after a while, like I started thinking about impact, and I started thinking about, trying to touch people in a certain way, being like, this is what I want to say, and this is the kind of message that I think people need to hear. So I think just like as my career has evolved and how I have evolved as an artist, I think that just those kinds of priorities have shifted. Yeah.
Got you. And I realize that we have like 1 minute left for each person to just kind of give a final word to the people who are listening. What's one thing that you'd want for everyone to sort of take away from your journey, Pearl?
I think just what I mentioned earlier, that it's worth investing in your own voice. And there is someone who wants to hear your story. And like how Carl and David mentioned, like you can start wherever you're at. I don't think there's truly a way where you're like, okay, I'm fully prepared, I'm going to say the story. Just do it wherever you're at right now. And I think you'll be surprised where you end up.
Thank you. How about you, Carl?
If there's anything that can be taken away, I would love for folks to be bold with their content, finish and get it out right now before we lose this window of opportunity of creators having the power to build their own audiences. Additionally, we all want to meet the next Pearlos and the next Everett Downings. And so definitely reach out to us, no matter what stage that you're at. If you're new to this, and maybe it's not a great fit, but we definitely want to work together and see how we can get to making it a fit. So, if anything, get out there and take advantage of this moment. I don't know how much longer that they're going to want to invest in certain types of content. So let's strike while the iron's hot and prove that long term, this is not a gimmick. This is sustainable, and people want to see more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And David?
Without getting too preachy, I mean, we've in the history, we've had, over 100 years of, filmmaking and animation, right? And most of the stories that have come out have really been focused on, the American experience, American perspective, and the European experience and perspective. And so, I think now more so than any other time in history is a time for us to make sure that our voices, our perspectives, our experiences are heard. And so I would say that, the important thing is remember that your voice, your perspective matters. I mean, it's not we're out of St. Louis for a couple different reasons, family and location, and we grew up here, but also too, we're out of the kind of zeitgeist and kind of bubble that is LA and New York, as well. And so, we have a different thinking, different perspective. So, being in Jamaica, you have a very unique perspective of things. And, just think about, stories of love and adventure and things like that, that come with, growing up in Jamaica and being Jamaican. Those stories have not been told to the wider world, and so make sure that, those stories are told, and so to everyone else's point, get started, get it out there. We want to see these kind of unique perspectives, and so that we don't have the same stories told over and over and over again. We need some differentiation. The only way we're going to get it is through these, other perspectives.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David. And Everett, what's one thought that you would like to leave with everyone listening?
I'm gonna keep it brief, short but sweet. But if you want to get out there and make things, you got to get out there and make things. Like get out there and do it. That's the only way. Like directing, whatever you want to do, it's a skill set. And in order to get that skill set, in order to perfect it, you got to practice it. So the only way to practice is by doing it. So just get out there and do it. And it's, at some point, there's the difference between being expert at something is like with your eye, it's getting your eye to match like what the output of what your body is doing. And that just takes practice. That's all it takes. So.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Everett. Thank you, David Stewart. We have Everett Downing, Carl Reed, Pearl Lowe. Carl and David's inboxes are going to be full because everybody's going to be sending them their projects to Lion Forge. All the upcoming directors and people who have stories to tell are going to be reaching out to Everett and Pearl. They're independent creatives who are going to want to figure out how you did it, find out more, and they're going to be reaching out to you. So we're so excited that you all were able to talk with us today. And we're looking forward to the next time we meet, that we're spending the next 6 months in the Jamaican side of the collaboration space in the sun, near the sea. So thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate your time and enjoy. Oh, and we're going to take some questions, I think, in just a few seconds. So thank you
Thanks
so
a
much.
lot, Kenya.
Thank
Kenya.
you.
That was great.
way of life is being affected, but our path to progress is not. Flow has continued to build its network infrastructure to prepare for times like these, to ensure that your connections to everything important are strong and reliable. And if you're a current Flow Home Service customer, upgraded services may be available in your area. Learning from home is smarter, and working from home is stronger than ever. The strength of the Flow network is yours and ready when you need it. Visit your nearest Flow store or discoverflow.co. It's our privilege to serve you.
Dressed in red and jeans that's too short. I know that it can't fit me anymore. Was just a boy, so I could only cry. And my mom took me to the schoolyard. That's where I rushed out of the car. It's gloomy, but that's what I like. Is it so bad? I love the sun much less than I do the moon. Is it weird I like pale blue painted on the sky? School breaks were always just too far. It always broke me down when we were apart. Was just a boy, so I could only cry. Afternoons were mostly the best part. Soft ground, moist from the rain warms my heart. Impatience wore down on my mind. Is it so bad? I love the sun much less than I do the moon. Is it weird I like pale blue painted on the sky? Is it so bad? I love the sun much less than I do the moon. Is it weird I like pale blue painted on the sky? Is it so bad? I love the sun much less than I do the moon. Is it weird I like pale blue painted on the sky?
Hi everyone, my name is Lisa and I'm the Toon Boom rep for the Caribbean. We are so excited to be part of the KingstOOn Animation Conference again this year. It is right around the corner, so get ready. Toon Boom has been supporting KingstOOn since before the start of the first conference in 2013. And what I love to see is just how much the animation industry has changed and how much it's grown since then. It's always a pleasure to come back here. You get to hear great speakers, to connect with the artists, the students, and see all the great stories that are shared and created here. If you're just getting started in animation, it only takes a couple of steps to get your idea out there, and we're happy to show you those steps. Connect with us during KingstOOn and join me on our exclusive Harmony demo. Register through the KingstOOn website and stick around for the live Q&A afterwards, you'll see. We will also be handing out some exciting prizes during the festival, so follow along. And I can't wait to see you there.
Our next session is designed for producers of kids' content. This one's an instructional session that will give you the essential ins and outs of crafting a show Bible for genres that target age groups 3 to 6. Now, animators know only too well that the right pitch could make or break a project. Our presenter for this session is a bona fide pitch master who will give you a step-by-step approach to delivering pitches with punch and prepare you for meetings with investors and broadcasters. He founded Little Airplane Productions and created Obi and Wonder Pets for Nickelodeon. He also won multiple Daytime Emmy Awards for his work as a writer on Sesame Street. He is none other than Josh Selig, founder and president of China Bridge Content. And just a reminder that the live chat is active, so you can ask Josh all your questions right over there. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Josh Selig.
Hi, everybody. My name is Josh Selig. I'm the founder of a company called China Bridge Content. I'm also the creator of a lot of preschool shows. So I created a show called The Wonder Pets from Nickelodeon, a show called Third and Bird, which was on the BBC and Disney, Small Potatoes, also on Disney, and a few others. So I'm sort of a one-trick pony, and my trick has been creating preschool content. And so today the organizers of KingstOOn asked me to come and meet with you guys and talk about how I put together preschool show Bibles. And these are really important tools because it's the show Bible that is what you pitch to the potential buyers, platforms, investors to get them interested in your IP. And I really think that the creation of the Bible is the most important step in anybody's presentation or in anybody's ambition towards making a preschool show. So let me get started. What is a preschool show Bible? So it has many functions creatively and commercially. First and foremost, it captures the DNA of your show in a very short graphic document, usually between 10 to 20 pages long, highly visual. Remember, you're pitching to people who are used to looking at pictures. They tend not to be very big readers. So the more graphic your Bible is, the better. Your Bible is your primary sales tool. When you sit down in an office or at a market or on a virtual pitch, everybody's going to want to see your Bible. So typically, it's the document that you pitch with. And I highly recommend that after creating your Bible, you do a lot of practicing because the presentation of your Bible is often as important as the contents of your Bible. The other thing that's really important, which a lot of people underestimate, is that your Bible is sort of your calling card in terms of you and your studio's creative standards. So if there are typos in your Bible, if there's some sloppiness, or if it's not finished and you say, oh, I'm going to add a page here later, any of these kinds of hiccups in your Bible tend to reflect very badly in the eyes of a buyer. Why? Because if they're going to work with you, they want to know that you really care about details. So getting your Bible right, highly polished, is really important because whether it's consciously or unconsciously, they're evaluating everything about your pitch. So proofreading is really important. Getting your page numbers correct is important. Making sure it's really polished, really finished is very important. I tend to look at show Bibles as triangles. They have three sides, and those sides are the writing of the Bible, the design of the Bible, and since we're talking about preschool, typically a curriculum, which is the educational side of the Bible. I see a lot of Bibles that have two out of the three sides. So sometimes they're really beautifully designed and they're very well written, but there's not really messaging there. There's not really substance. And for the preschool community, most people really want to know that there's something of value within this content. Other times I see Bibles that really don't have sophisticated storytelling, but they have great dynamic design. So making sure that you shore up your Bible on all three sides is important. And that may not be, those three skill sets may not be skills that you yourself have. For example, I'm not a designer, I'm not a curriculum person, I'm a writer. So I always write our Bibles, but then I work with others, great designers, great curriculum people, to fill out my triangle. And likely this will be the same for you. And it's important to be very honest with yourself. You know, am I an early childhood expert? And if the answer is no, find one. And ideally, they should be someone who works in media. A lot of people will say, I had a preschool teacher write my curriculum. And not to take anything away from preschool teachers, it's a different medium being in a real classroom than doing curriculum for content. So there are a handful of folks in different countries all over the world who really specialize in doing the curriculum for TV shows. And it's really worth seeking them out because it's a very specific type of expertise that they bring. So I want to talk about the kinds of writing that typically appear in show Bibles. There's, of course, the overview. This is typically your first 1 to 3 pages, a very simple description of your content. A lot of people tend to overwrite their beginning, and they tend to be very text heavy. I am a big advocate of simplicity. Tell your story in simple language so they get it, they understand what your content's about. After this is typically character descriptions. Again, shorter is better. Just be really clear, be really simple. I'm going to show you some examples of these in a few moments. The formal features of your show. Now, what differentiates a TV show from, say, a movie is that there are certain recurring elements, and this is particularly true in a preschool show. There's a certain familiarity to the structure of preschool shows. Little kids really like that. They like being able to predict that at this point in the show, something's going to be solved, something's going to be resolved. They like knowing if there's a big song at the end, they want to be part of that. So there's a certain amount of predictability in preschool, which doesn't mean that it gets repetitive. It doesn't need to. You still have to riff and make every episode fresh and original, but your Bible should capture your formal features. It should say really clearly, and it should lay out over a few pages, these are the kinds of things that happen in every show. Then there are some synopses. I only recommend 3 synopses, and I think they should be pretty short. I've seen Bibles where people write synopses for all 52 episodes of the first season. It's really not necessary. People aren't going to read that many. Keep in mind that your Bible is mostly a sales tool in their eyes. They want to see if they like what you have. So you don't want to overwhelm them with detail. And that includes you don't want to overwhelm them with story synopses. And also, if they're too long, people tend not to read them. So really short, just think of a few clear sentences that capture what each of those plots would be. And if you want, you can have some art be a part of that. And then there's the summary. So these are the writing side of the triangle. And as I say, I'll show you some examples in a minute. Design. So design is obviously a critical part of any preschool Bible. And obviously, there's going to be your characters and your backgrounds. Now, one thing that I really encourage you to do in your Bible is to present the characters and the backgrounds in the context of the stories that you're telling. So I don't recommend having a bunch of pages of empty backgrounds and a bunch of pages of character turnarounds. This is more what you would see in a production Bible, you know, that an animation studio would put together. It's not what you would expect in a pitch Bible or a presentation Bible. So much better to include the characters and the backgrounds in elements of stories. And I'll show you examples of that as well in a moment. And then the third side of the triangle is the curriculum. As I mentioned, if you can work with someone who specializes in this area, it's always helpful. It gives a certain amount of credibility to your property. So if you're dealing with something that's environmentally related, if you have someone who's an expert in that area, who works in the kids media space, who's advising you, who's drafted that curriculum document, it always helps. It gives substance to your message. The curriculum documents don't need to be long. Most shows, if they have them at all, they're usually 2 or 3 pages long. If you're making a show for a public broadcaster, sometimes they require a much more robust curriculum, and I've seen them be 20, 30, 40 pages long. But for most networks, most buyers, a short curriculum will suffice. And typically, especially for the North American market, there's an emphasis on soft curriculum. This means goals that are more gentle, that are woven into the story in a really natural way. And these could be anything from emotions, community, cooperation. So these kind of pro-social, social, emotional types of goals are often considered soft curriculum. The other kind of curriculum, hard curriculum, is what you'll see on some of the public broadcasters. Hard curriculum refers to things like science, math, literacy. These are much more technical in the curriculum side. They require a lot more experts in the writing of the shows, a lot more oversight, because you're really promising to provide some hard skills. And typically when a show gets commissioned that has hard curriculum, there's both formative testing and summative testing to see if you've actually delivered on the promise of your curriculum. There aren't really that many hard curriculum shows out there anymore, but certainly there are some, and there are some great public broadcasters who commission those shows. But I recommend for every preschool show having some kind of curriculum, even if it's a very modest, short curriculum. So I'm going to show you two preschool show Bibles today. These are both Bibles that I worked on at different times in my career. Both of these Bibles led to production, so they were produced, and these Bibles led directly to getting funding. The first was a short form series. Short form means usually anything from a minute to 4 minutes. These were 1 minute episodes. They were nonverbal. And I'll walk you through this pitch deck very much like I would have walked a broadcaster through the pitch deck. So this show is called The Olive Branch, and it's all about tolerance. And this show is about two characters. One is named Red, one is named Yellow, and they live together in the branches of this beautiful olive tree. But these two friends are as different as two friends can be. In fact, they're so different, they're hardly even friends at all. You see, they're really different. Yellow is a very quiet guy. He likes his garden, he likes reading, he likes gentle music, whereas Red is a bit of a lunatic. He likes to dance at night, he stays up late, he wears fruit on his head. He just has a very lively spirit. So this is a show about their lives together in the olive tree. And it shows that you can have two characters with very different perspectives, and they can reach peaceful, amicable solutions to all of their problems. I should also mention this is a non-verbal show. So the stories are told only with visuals and beautiful music. So as I said, they're 1 minute episodes. And what I'm going to show you now is the way a story would play out. So this is the way an episode would look. So one evening, Yellow was getting ready for bed and he heard the most awful racket. It was Red, who was nearby playing on his strummy. Yellow explained to Red that he needed to sleep. Red explained to Yellow that he really needed to play his strummy. They just couldn't agree. They became very angry at one another. And then at the very same time, they got an idea, something that would make them both happy. Red decided to play a gentle lullaby on his strumming, and this helped Yellow to fall asleep. And this was a happy resolution to this 1 minute piece of animation. In terms of a curriculum, I worked with a woman named Dr. Laura Brown, who's very well known in the kids community. And she drafted a very simple curriculum statement for this show. I won't read it to you here, but you can read it. And it's really just about tolerance, accepting differences, understanding that people have different perspectives, but you can always find solutions. And now I'd like to play for you the 1 minute animation that was based on this pitch Bible. And there were other episodes as well, but this one will illustrate the connection, the close connection between what's in the Bible and what's in the ultimate show. So I hope you enjoy this 1 minute of animation. So that is the olive branch. And I want to shift now to a second Bible, which has a very different energy in every regard from the olive branch. So this is a Bible for a show called Super Wings. This is something that I wrote with and for a Korean company called Funny Flux. And they had a toy partner, which is Alpha, which is a big Chinese toy company. And they had at that time a concept, which was planes that turn into robots, but they didn't really have a show at that stage. So this is the Bible that was written and produced with them and for them. And this is for a long form show. Long form shows tend to be anywhere from 7 minutes to 22 minutes at the longest. This is for 11-minute episodes. 11 minutes, a pretty standard length in preschool world. So this is the Super Wings Bible. And as you can see, even from the font on the cover, this is a very different proposition from Olive Branch. Olive Branch had a very quiet energy. It was part of a nonprofit initiative, hand-drawn animation. Clearly, when you look at the cover of the Super Wings Bible, you can see this is energetic, it's toy-driven, or toyetic, as some people like to say. But it still has structurally all of the same issues and all the same elements of the olive branch. And as I walk you through this Bible, I just would encourage you to keep your eye open for how those structural elements are similar, because I believe that the same structure applies to any kind of Bible that you would do. Always has a triangle I'm talking about, always covers the same elements, but they can cover them in different and highly unique ways. So this is the Super Wings Bible. This is quite a long Bible. So I'm not going to read every page, but I'll walk you through it. So Super Wings, it's a new action-packed preschool show about an adorable jet plane named Jet who travels the world delivering packages. While he's delivering packages, he always runs into some problem, and he needs his friends, the Super Wings, to help him solve those problems. So these aren't just regular planes. These guys can transform into robots, and these robots can do extraordinary things. They can dig, they can dive underwater, they can go into the sea. So in every episode, they have an adventure in a new place. In one episode, for example, Jet delivered a costume to a girl in Rio. She needed it for her big samba dance performance. When they arrived, it turned out she also needed some dance lessons. So Jet and the Super Wings helped the girl learn to samba, and they even performed with her. In another episode, this was in the Sahara, there were some kids, they really wanted to play in the snow, and Jet and the Super Wings ended up airlifting an iceberg to them so they could play in the snow for the very first time. So again, very action-based, very visual, different locations. So Jet lives in the World Airport with his friends, the Super Wings. They have a very friendly air traffic controller. He gets a call in the beginning of every episode and dispatches Jet and his friends to different locations. They have a signature phrase that they say in every episode: Super Wings, we deliver. How we have our character pages, there's a lot of these, so I'm going to go through them relatively quickly. But as you can see, the description is really short. I sometimes see Bibles where there'll be 2 or 3 pages of character descriptions, and people tend to glaze over with that much text. This is a really simple description, very simple images. There aren't turnarounds, just a good hero pose. This obviously shows Jet in the air, also shows him in robot form. Similarly, this is Dizzy, who's one of his friends. She's a rescue helicopter. Donnie, who's all about his tools. And again, very simple character descriptions. We don't say a lot about them. But again, this is not a production Bible. It's not a writer's Bible. This is a pitch Bible, sales Bible. Roy, who's a luggage cart. Jimbo, who's their air traffic controller. Jerome and Grand Albert. One of the things that you'll notice in general in the preschool industry is if there are toys associated with the show, then often that show has a lot of characters. Why? Because they want to make sure that there's a lot of product that they can sell. And then there's typically also some sort of a home base that typically becomes a toy as well. Paul and Bello, two more characters, Sammy and Tom. So then now we get to the formal features part of the Bible. As I mentioned in the beginning, the formal features are the things that happen in every episode. And when you're pitching, it's really important to show the buyer, the broadcaster, how an episode plays out. Because even if it's clear in your mind, if you only have it represented with text without visuals, it's often hard to follow. So in this particular Bible, we broke out the first episode, pilot episode. Now this was done far before the pilot ever being produced. All of this happens before any animation. But here's how an episode would work for Super Wings. One day, Jimbo gets a call from two brothers, Akash and Remy, and they have to deliver a special package to their home in the Himalayas. So they take the package as fast as they can to the Himalayas, and the kids open it, and there are some pieces of a kite to put together for the big kite flying festival. While they're doing their assembling of the kite, these two mischievous little red pandas come into the scene, and they end up getting onto the kite, and they get blown away by a gust of wind. So the kids and Jet are very concerned because now these two young red pandas are off into the sky. So Jet flies after them into a canyon in the mountains. He has to do some expert flying tricks to keep up. And during this chase scene, the kite gets blown into the mountain. It gets caught on a tree. Jet tries to rescue them. He gets his foot stuck. It's time to call the Super Wings. So he calls home base. They dispatch the Super Wings, his friends, and they come soaring over. They rescue Jet. They fix the kite. They get the kids to the kite flying competition just in time. The red pandas get to fly along in a little basket underneath the kite. So everybody's happy in the end. And so you can tell very clearly what the episode is about based on these formal features. Now we proceed to the synopses. As I mentioned, I'm a big fan of just doing a few of these and not having them be too long because I want people to read them. And so here we focused on 3 different countries and 3 different cultures for the 3 synopses. The first was a shadow puppet episode, which took place in Beijing. There was Great Gondolas, which was a Venice episode. And then there was like a Hollywood lights, camera, action episode. And again, these are just a few sentences to describe what happens in each of these episodes. And the idea is to really help a broadcaster understand that if they pick up this show, these are the kinds of places they'll go, the kinds of stories that will be told. And it gives them a sense of the range of the episode. So, for example, you wouldn't want to say in your synopses, they're going to go into outer space 3 times, unless the whole show is a space show. You want to show variety in your synopses. You also want to convey that there are different kinds of storylines, even though they all fit the formal features of the series. Now we get to a more complex, robust curriculum. This was written by a woman here in New York named Dr. Beth Richmond. Sorry, Beth Richmond. She's not a doctor. She has a master's in education, and she has worked for a lot of companies, including Sesame Street and Nickelodeon and others. And she's really terrific at crafting curriculum around individual shows. So in this case, what I and the partners in Korea and China wanted was a curriculum that would emphasize the travel element of the show and also the problem-solving element. So Beth had suggested these 2 goals. The first one is introduction to cultural diversity. And I won't read every word, but basically in this goal, it emphasizes that in the series, the characters will travel to a variety of different countries. And while they're there, they'll have a variety of experiences involving the landscape, the language, animals, food, clothing, holidays, tradition, games and toys, folk tales, songs, dance, and crafts. So once we got to the actual writing of the episodes, Beth also stayed involved, and she checked the scripts and provided information to the writers to make sure that they were crafting those stories with these cultural elements in mind, depending on what country, of course, they were going to. Second goal that we worked on with Beth was creative problem solving. So every episode has a big problem that these characters have to overcome. And that can be done in a very casual way, or it can be done in a specific way. So the way Beth really encouraged us and the writing team to deal with the goals on Super Wings was through these 4 elements: showing flexible thinking, predicting possible outcomes, observing and evaluating what's happening, and showing perseverance, that you have to keep on trying. So these types of goals are really important in your pitch meeting. And I have to tell you, when we first pitched the show to Sprout in the US, they were in Philadelphia at the time. When they first saw the Bible, they said, this looks a lot like a toy commercial, and Sprout's an educational network. Why is this an IP that we would be interested in? And we spent a lot of time talking through these goals with the buyers at Sprout. And ultimately, they came around to see that this was more than just a toy commercial. These were good stories. These were stories that were supported by curriculum. So curriculum can really help you, depending on who your buyer is. And then, of course, you have to deliver on it once you promise it. So as I said, on our show and on most of our shows, we've had very thorough research in terms of a team that evaluates scripts, gives script comments, does some formative testing, which means showing images, sometimes storyboards, sometimes animatics to kids, getting their feedback. So it's a thorough process, and it definitely adds to your costs, but the costs are not excessive, and they really help your show to be a better show. And then in the Bible, there's always a summary. So summary is usually pretty short. There's usually a very beautiful kind of hero image, like this one that shows kids waving to the super wings in the sky. And then this is the team page. So I only do team pages when there's multiple teams, or when you want to provide detail about your team, assuming you have a team. So this could be one company, it could be 3 companies. In this case, we wanted to highlight that there was a toy company, a great production studio in Korea, and my team in New York handling the pre-production, the writing, the research. So this is part of the pitch. The buyers want to know who's going to be making the show. And these days, they really tend to care a lot about who the showrunner is, who the head writer is. They want to ensure that there's some authenticity and diversity in your team. The team page is really a very important part of the document. And typically your team has a background that really supports the nature of the content that you've created, that you're pitching. And then this is the back cover of this Bible. And as you see, it has contact information. It's a very simple thing, but it's really important that if someone sees your Bible, that they know how to contact you. And remember, the person that you pitch to is not always the person who actually makes the decisions. In fact, quite often they're the early gatekeeper. And if they like your pitch, they bring it back to their team. And then they have to kind of repitch your pitch to their bosses. And this happens sometimes it's a small group, sometimes it's a gigantic group that includes licensing people, distribution people, production people. So you really want it to be that your Bible is kind of a all-inclusive and self-pitching document. You don't want to send them some images in an email and some text in another email, and your contact information is not really anywhere to be found. You want it to be a really nice, tight, professional package, so that even if somebody ends up Xeroxing or copying your Bible on a bad copier, that it still kind of works. It still conveys the critical messages that decision makers need to make their decisions. So to summarize, in my experience, you really don't need animation to pitch an animated show. And in fact, having the animation can hurt you as much as it can help you. In my experience, what you really need to sell a show, to get interest, is a really well-written, well-designed show Bible with a good curriculum, and then also a great pilot script. Because if anybody likes your Bible, their first question is going to be, do you have any scripts? And they're not going to want 10 scripts. They're going to want 1 or 2. and they're going to read them very carefully, and they're very good at reading scripts. They're very good at seeing, does this have legs? Could this sustain for 2 seasons, 3 seasons, 4 seasons? So having fewer materials that are really high quality is something I strongly recommend over having a volume of materials or producing a lot of animation. If you're going to show any animation, I strongly recommend you have maybe 1 minute of animation that shows your main characters. It shows the energy of your show. I tend to do songs for 1 minute pitch trailers, and often those songs end up being the songs for the show later on. But songs are great because they're dynamic, they're fun to watch, you can get away with a lot of fun editing. I don't recommend doing a minute-long scene of 2 characters talking. It just tends to be a little too static. Even though it's only a minute, people can get bored in a minute very easily. So I tend to recommend things that really move for those trailers if you're going to make a trailer. But again, you don't really have to have a trailer. A good buyer can see into a Bible and know whether that's going to work or not without the animation. And animation can just as easily hurt if the quality isn't there. If your team says, well, it's better to show this even though it's not in color, it's not really finished, but we wanted to give you a taste. I tend not to think that helps. I think better to show nothing than to show something that you feel isn't your best work, because that 1 minute of animation is going to be looked at very carefully by a lot of people who are used to seeing world-class stuff. So I always recommend the Bible and the pilot first and foremost to get pre-sales, which is what you're usually looking for when you first pitch a Bible, is to get someone to come in early to provide some investment, to provide a platform. So those are my general thoughts about preschool Bibles. Certainly, if you have any questions, type them in the chat. I will be here to answer them, as many as I can. And I just want to thank you for your time and attention. And that's it.
noticed that animation has been popping up everywhere? In education, advertising, health, and so many other professional fields. Well, the global animation industry is expected to grow by 11% between 2020 and 2025 and has become a growing area of employment internationally. To emphasize the importance of using animation as a tool for teaching other industries, especially here in Jamaica, are Claire Grant, TVJ, Michael Luktong, Flow, and Tashara Lee Johnson, advertising agency, The Lab. The panel will be moderated by Doyen Williams, animation industry consultant at the World Bank. The live chat feature is available, and you can ask the panelists all your questions. So let me now hand over to Doyen.
Thanks, Debbie, and welcome everyone to the Animating Your Everyday Reality panel. With us, we have Michael Luktong, Tashara, and Miss Claire Grant from TVJ. So we have represented here, we have cable provider and telecommunications operator, an advertising agency, and the national broadcasting network or provider. So as we move into this panel, I'm not going to try to introduce these wonderful people. I'm actually going to hand over to each of them, and I'm going to ask them to provide us with just a quick rundown of who they are, what their company does, and how they affect the animation industry.
Thank you, Doyen. I am Michael Luktong. Currently, I'm the Director of Entertainment Networks at Flow. I've been in telecommunications probably too long, 14 years or so, and cable television. A couple firsts that I'm proud of. I mean, we are involved in the first HD channels, that were, broadcast on cable, video on demand platform. We first to do that. A lot of great stuff that we did on the analytics front in Jamaica. So, spent a lot of time in telecom, spent a lot of time in cable television. And, we do, there's animation plays several roles in our business, which I'm sure we'll get into in our discussions. I could just go through a little quickly about Flow and how we operate. Flow is part of Cable and Wireless, primarily operating in, probably every English-speaking country in the Caribbean. We're part of a larger group of companies called Liberty Latin America, which includes some significant businesses in Costa Rica, as well as Chile and in Puerto Rico. Just to bring it back home, we are, we're the largest distributor of cable television in the Caribbean. We have networks in probably 22 markets in the Caribbean and direct operations in 15. We provide, give or take about 250 channels. It varies by market. We operate 11 channels ourselves. And then we have a budding, growing digital platform, our Flow Sports app, as well as a Flow to Go platform. We are also the largest buyers of cable content in the region, and we are the major customers of Disney, as well as Turner, Viacom, and Discovery. Animation is a significant element to several services that we provide in entertainment, as well as in our customer experience. And we are committed to providing the best animation that's available globally, so everybody gets exposed to it, and we think that could unlock a lot of potential here in Jamaica for the development of animation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. And right after you, I'm going to ask Tashara, and then we'll close out with Ms. Grant from TVJ.
Thank you, Doyen. I'm Tashara Lee Johnson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at The Lab. The Lab, also known, well, the real name is the Limnas and Bards Limited, but a lot of persons know us as The Lab, is a advertising agency and digital agency. We also are a production house here in Jamaica. We have over 13 plus years of experience We have 3 distinct units at the lab. We have our agency, we have our production unit, and we also have our media innovation unit. So under agency, we have our creatives, copywriters, designers, and client management team. Under the media innovation, we have where traditional media, which is the TV, the radio, the print. We have digital media. We also have brand insight, consumer research and insight. And then under production, which is what persons might know us most for, is our film production unit and then post-production unit. Under the post-production unit is where you have like the radios, the live production, and animation and motion graphics. For us, animation is a key part of translating a lot of our stories into a format that is translatable, understandable, and relatable to a few persons outside of just doing footage and live streams. It is something that we always bring to the fore in terms of ideas and how we can pitch it in another way. I think COVID, for example, has given light to a lot of that because there are so many restrictions now in terms of hours and filming. And so we find that animation is definitely growing and it's something that's going to be a part of a lot of what is curated moving from here on.
Thank you, Tashara. And let's close out with the lovely Miss Grant.
Thank you, Dan. I'm the general manager for Radio and Television Jamaica, the RGR Gleaner Communications Group. The merger between the RGR Communications Group and the Gleaner Company took place within the last 6 years, so that is fairly recent in a lot of people's memories. My responsibility in terms of radio and TV, and specifically TV, is where the animation interest is there. TVJ is Jamaica's #1 brand. And we like to think that in terms of the region, we certainly are far ahead of most of the other territories in terms of the nature of local content and actual production work that we do. So within the TV entities that exist within the group, however, TVJ is the lead brand. It is the big brand. We also have cable stations in the form of Television Jamaica Sports Network, RETV, which is Reggae Entertainment, as well as Jamaica News Network. We then have recently launched TVJ International, which is a brand that currently broadcasts out of Cayman, and we're busily trying to roll it out across the region, across the world. And most significant, I think, in 2014, we launched our OTT platform, which was way ahead of certainly the other players in the region who were not, I don't think we're quite paying attention to that space, but for us, we did recognize that the OTT platforms was the next leap in terms of how media was going to transmit. So we created a One Spot Media Tracks platform. It has on all our brands. It also has on Carib Vision and all of the radio brands. It's an exciting platform. It does pay-per-view, it does rentals, and it's an interesting component of what we do and how we see the future. As far as animation is concerned, though, for television and as a station that is invested in local content, graphics is central to what I call the sexiness of the brand. So for the people who are watching television every day, they don't tend to appreciate that this is animated work. But when you watch Smile every morning and you see the cup coming up and it's spinning and the steam is coming out, and all of that is work that comes from people who have that skill set. So a lot of times people think of animation and they all think that, well, you're going to have to be working on Frozen and that's what it's about, or it's cartoons. No, there's a lot more to that particular skill set. It's actually quite rare. And people who understand the depth of what they are supposed to do or what can be a career they're not many. Last night we had, I'm saying last night as in the 8th of April, we had the final of School's Challenge Quiz. And there was an insert there at the beginning as to how the kids were presented. That's all animation. They got pretty creative and did something with a drone showing the kids come up. And then we have invested fairly recently, like the last 4 or 5 years, in software that allows us to do augmented reality or virtual reality. And that has also allowed us to roll out a lot of things because as we're doing more programming, we can't build out all sets. You're not going to be able to do that. Yes, you're going to want to have some real sets, but what virtual reality and augmented reality is going to allow us to do is to utilize the technology to create sets and save us money, but also provide another experience. So for us, it's a really important area. We are interested in actually doing full productions and our own cartoon work for local content as we have done with other things, but it's a big deal for us.
And thank you for that, Ms. Grant. And actually, I want to come right back to you because you raised a lot of what I think are really, really powerful points with regards to just how the animation industry works and how we can see ourselves growing together and how TVJ can support that. So I wanted to begin my questions to kind of tease out a little bit more about the virtualization of your sets and the kind of skill sets that you might be looking for. If you could tell us a little bit more about how that works. Are we looking at people who are going to the universities right now to learn a little bit more about 2D animation? Are we looking at people that are going to universities to learn about 3D animation? And how does that come together within your own workspace right now?
I mean, it is that and more. I think one of the things that people need to understand is that the creative process involves a range of things, right? So for example, for the finals for quiz, the creative department, the graphics department, they're challenged every year to, well, what am I going to come up to do that's going to be different? So the very first time they did that kind of production, it was very TV-esque. You know, they went out and they did a shoot and they kind of just had basic television type graphics that they were using. But what you saw last night is certainly moving it to another level.
Right.
Really beginning to use now the graphic animation skill sets in a creative way. Mm-hmm. I say that to say, yeah, the training is one thing, but it's a lot more about having a clearer understanding of how TV, the medium, works. Because the idea as to what you're going to do has to start, first of all, from saying, okay, what is it that will make this idea sexy? They kind of thought about it and said, well, it's a pandemic and we want to figure out how we're going to show the kids without them touching and kind of make a point about the pandemic. So just the ideas creatively are even more important than just understanding how you're going to do the things that animators do. And that becomes very important because when people are only locked into the hard skill set of the images and how you create them and how you sketch them and all of that, then it becomes difficult for them to kind of transition into a full-blown department and be really contributing to what you want to get coming out at the end.
Great. And so what I hear coming from you, and excuse me if I don't get the TV terms right, but what I hear coming out from you is there is an element that is beyond the hard skill, where if we're talking about training, we should also be looking at production and direction of animation, not just the creation and technicalities of the animation skill. Great.
So if I am thinking visionary, I see TVJ animation. I see the logo. I know what it looks like. It's something that I certainly see us having down the road. Could be soon. However, when I think about TV animation, and a lot of people think it's just about hiring animators.
Right.
Somebody's going to have to write the script, right? Somebody is going to have to think through what the characters are and their components of how that is going to happen. Somebody is going to write a script, but yes, you have to make the script translatable for the medium.
Right.
Just like any other platform, yeah, you're going to tell a story, but how do you write a script that translates into television? Mm-hmm. How do you write a script that translates into television through animation? That's a specific skill set. And that's something that you really have to understand and appreciate. So if I'm thinking of rolling out an animation department, there are so many components to it that are not just about, well, I went to university and I understand how to use a computer and to animate, right?
Understood.
I think that is one of the areas that over the years when we've been having KingstOOn and there are different groups that come together, everybody is not really seized in understanding that there's so many components to this thing and you have to appreciate them. Otherwise, you're going to be trying to do something and you don't do it fully and you don't understand why. And it's because there's some components of what is required that you didn't really think through or didn't think you needed to be expert in.
Great. I think that's a great insight, especially for this kind of a panel. I do have another question for you that does go to that kind of script writing and storytelling idea. One of the things that I've found myself in working with animation over the years in Jamaica is that everybody is, as you said earlier, locked into this idea that they need to work on a Frozen or they need to work on the next huge series or so on. And so you find a lot of people that get stuck because they don't have the money to work on Frozen. They don't have the nicks to work on Frozen. They don't have the hardware to work on Frozen. But they do have the skill and equipment to work on a short 2-minute piece, what we would probably term an interstitial. Again, please feel free to correct me if I'm getting the TV terms wrong, right? But what we'd consider an interstitial. So one of the things that I can foresee is us pushing this idea of getting people into the culture of working in the TV space by working with interstitials. Right. What's TVJ's appetite for something like that?
Well, I mean, we're a business, right? I know that we are the nation station, so a lot of people think of us as the nation station. That's not a business, but we're a business, right? So obviously we have to do anything that we're doing, we have to think through how it works. It doesn't mean that every single thing that we do is going to make a profit, because there's a point at which we have to put the skin in the game and we have to invest to build something, but you're not going to, throw yourself under the bus. I certainly think that as we've been playing around in that space or trying to play around in that space for some time, the model that we have, and this is TVJ as a child of JBC that has evolved over the years, right? From the beginning when it started, and understanding that we stand on a pillar of local content, and that's what defines us and that's what differentiates us. And you make an attempt to venture into the production of local content in the way that you're able to do it, and you grow.
All right.
So I think one of the most exciting products that we did in recent times would have been Ring Games Season 2. And you look at the production values on that in comparison to Ring Games Season 1, and it's chalk and cheese. But Ring Games Season 1 was important to get into Ring Games Season 2.
Right.
And Ring Games Season 3, we expect that it is again going to be moving. I sit and I watch on a Sunday night on TVJ, Greenleaf and Queen Sugar. I see no reason, based on where we ended Season 2, that type of production is possible. Now, we did Season 1, and at that time, somebody's going to say, oh, well, it doesn't look all that. Why didn't you do Queen Sugar and that sort of production? You have to take the steps. And animation is pretty much the same. I believe we have to take the steps.
Right.
We have to look at something that is manageable from a cost, manageable from the resources that we have. And it's not that you want to put out bad work, and this is important. It's not that you're planning to put out substandard work, but you kind of have to be reasonable to say, okay, what can I do and how far can I get? Do it. Don't not do it, but let's do it. So if we do it and you get something, I would like to work on it internally and engage people to come. I'd like to engage students to come. Try to do something and get a little feel. Once something is out there, it stimulates a whole lot of stuff. I don't like being out there, for example, and people say, oh boy, TVJ only do that. I can do something better. Come, do something better. That's fine. Come, do something. Even if it do something better and Michael gets it, it doesn't matter. It begins to start a process of growing this industry in a tangible way, outside of what I think we've been doing a lot of, which is, talk.
And you know what? I'm going to take that segue that you gave me about Michael, and I'm going to jump straight to him, actually. Thank you so much, Ms. Grant, for your responses. They're very insightful. Michael, you've been put on the spot.
First time.
So, I mean, one of the things that Ms. Grant brought out to us is about this idea of steps and the entire thing of animation being a business, and how you work that out. And I know what Flow brings to the table is this kind of a wide-reaching network of businesses and arms and connectivities and so on. One of the bigger things that I've heard animators come to me and complain about, especially the same 3D animators that we were mentioning earlier, was at the end of the day, equipment is expensive, right? And so things that they want to do, they can't do because they can't get the equipment, right? And then this terminology of a render farm comes up. I'm not super technical, but the idea is I am able to kind of pass on the load of this particular process to a cloud computing situation. My estimation is that probably Flow, given its outlay, would have a lot of cloud computing power. Has Flow ever thought of maybe repurposing or direct purposing some of its power, some of its processing power, and some of its networking to this idea of a render farm in an attempt to help to buffet some of the demand from the animation industry?
Well, absolutely. I think the key that you hit on there is the network, right? We are, the largest provider of subsea capacity, hands down, in the Caribbean. And that network has, a lot of capacity on it. Basically, what you're talking about is the ability for animators, to be in a cloud environment, and to be able to tap into some kind of centralized facility where they're putting their work up, and then it comes to somebody, and somebody is doing some more processing of the content. We are actually looking at a solution similar to that. It's not animation, but it's a similar concept in the Eastern Caribbean right now to be able to produce, high level, sports. But the concept is the same. You have all these contributors. One could be in Jamaica, one could be in India or whatever, and they are tapping into some kind of centralized facility. Now we have the network in place that does that, the subsea network. And as I said, the capacity on that, we are nowhere near the capacity to use that. So the infrastructure is there. The backbone to do it, is already in place. As I said, we've on the media front, we actually already working on a solution for live video. But animation is no different. The rendering farm is no different. You need gigabit capacity, to tap into a centralized facility. We have that on our network that's in place, so that is possible. To get something like that going, actually, it's not impossible. I think all that's really needed is the environment to do it. The actual applications and stuff like that, but the network connectivity is there. We have it in place. We're already carrying 70% of the internet traffic in the Caribbean, and it's not even scraping the surface of our network. Right. The capacity is there, and for animation, as you rightly said, this is gigabit, file transfer and stuff that you need, that needs to be instantaneous. But the network is in place.
It sounds, Michael, like what you're saying to me is what you want is somebody to carry a business proposal to, So I'm guessing this is now a call to the more technical people who are looking for this kind of a thing to say, put something together and let's talk, because we have the capacity to kind of knock it down.
The capacity in place, as I said, we're already working on something hopefully will come to fruition in the next couple of months, and that project is basically the same. It's all production,
pulling everything together
at high quality, and I would say zero latency, but minimal latency. So it's our rendering farm for animation is no different. The core is a network that has the capacity, and that is largely in place already.
Great. All right. No, I wanted to ask you another question that kind of slightly takes us away from the technical. In preparing for this kind of a panel, I reached out to a lot of the people in the animation network, and I said, what are some of the questions that you have? Maybe there are opportunities you're seeing that these service providers aren't seeing. What do you want me to bring forward for you? And one of the things that came out of that was this idea of, again, going back to Flow's reach across the Caribbean. And unfortunately, Flow's not so rosy reputation around customer service. And so what they were saying was, maybe what you could begin looking at with Flow is if there was a possibility for, because each of your modems come with a kind of a home page, right? Is there any kind of a thought around probably slapping and some motion graphics as to how you can do self-service on your modems, or maybe even creating a space for having local content that is easily viewed, because the modem is there and it's in everybody's house and people go to the homepage at every point in time. What's your consideration of that? Is that something that could even be considered?
Well, it's actually some stuff that's in place. I think what you're really talking about is people's let's call it digital experience, and we are absolutely focused on digital in our customer experience. I mean, COVID has forced us to be erecting e-stores, which customers can go to, and obviously, we are sold that animation is very, very compelling, in the digital space. So you'll hear us talk about our digital experience, from our CEO come down. We are preaching that. And we want our experiences to be, as engaging as possible. I mean, and when you're doing things digitally, animation just lends itself.
Indeed, it does.
To a digital experience. If you look at a couple of the apps that we've launched, there are some animation elements to it, and we can only build on that. So absolutely, we are focused on a digital customer experience, and we are sold that animation enhances that entire experience.
Great, thank you, Michael. I kind of want to use what you said to springboard over to our advertising agency, because a lot of the times they're the ones that have some kind of input into that creative piece that is the end result. So Tashara, I'll call you to the fore now, and I want to know, because I mean the lab has this history and culture and reputation ever since I've been engaged with the lab of getting it done. That's a big deal. You guys get it done, and you get it done right the first time, kind of a thing, right? And so I want to know a little bit about how that works. But in my mind, I can also see that animation is a time-consuming piece of work, whether or not you're doing it in post-production or if you're just doing it and that is a production. So I was thinking around what really could an advertising agency benefit from investing into deeply in animation that nobody has thought about, or that I don't see out and about as yet. And I thought about it and said, well, why don't we have a Jamaican animation asset at that library? And what would stop someone like the lab from spearheading this kind of a project? What are your thoughts on something like that?
Well, nothing will stop us from a brilliant idea, and we are open to ideas all the time. I think it's really brilliant. As you said, we bring a lot of the stories to life. And as Claire mentioned earlier, animation is all encompassing. It is the graphics that you see, it's the supers, as we call it, the names. Probably people watching this sees my name come up, and that is a part of animation. It's something that is not just the big picture, but it's small. I think an asset library is key, because for example, at the lab, we tend to use a lot of the stock imagery sites, the Envatos, and we're purchasing these things over and over and over. And building that helps us to funnel that money or that spend into our economy. It's like an ecosystem. And it's a part of the bigger picture for Jamaica, I'm sure, because we want to be sustainable, not only in our traditional space of tourism and this, but in the creative industries, which are so severely impacted now, and it's very evident to everyone. So how can we now use this opportunity of COVID and this idea of animation and everything else in the creative industry and make it an ecosystem, so it's a start to finish, not doing external stuff, not purchasing, and really just developing it and using it. So we welcome that idea. Internally, we don't have a lot of persons who do animation here. We have a few persons who have that skill set. And it's something that we try to get abreast of who are the people in Jamaica that are available. I'm glad that we're doing this session because it creates a network for us to use and be of benefit on either side.
And I will ensure to introduce you to the Jamaica Animation Nation Network following this.
Brilliant, because the truth is sometimes when we're doing animation, we go outside. I know that you probably know that Jamaica, maybe Trinidad, and I think St. Vincent are like the 3 Caribbean islands that do have this kind of skill set in common. And one of our animators is from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, funny enough, and he travels. So he was in Russia and he's in Europe and he's able to work with us. Now, I think building the library is one thing. The talent is here and we can craft that, is getting the infrastructure as well to ensure that it's like an e-commerce. It is functional and the system supports it. So I'm glad to hear that Flo is interested and can facilitate that. I'm sure Digicel can do the same, and it would be good to have all the key persons integral in the industry to stimulate that, yeah.
Kind of an activity. I wondered as well, Tashara, because big production house that you are, I'm pretty sure you have some very, very nice computers that may not be used all of the time. And another question that kind of comes out of that investigation into the render farm from Flow or from our telcos is the idea that what if you began to look at a remote kind of distributed workforce, or even a situation where you maximize on the use of your own computers by allowing people to remotely connect to your computers when they're down, so they can actually use your processing power, etc. Maybe even some of the licenses that you have to actually put out creative work. Is the lab as a publicly traded company, is the lab in the kind of a space to even consider something like that? Because what that would do is that you would bring to the table now another space for equipment, and maybe even a node for that kind of a render farm that we're thinking about, talking to Michael to afterwards. What do you think the lab's position is where that's concerned?
Yeah, I think we welcome ideas all the time. We have considered something to that effect, in where we'll create almost like a hub of creatives, and it will go into what you're going to speak about probably, which are the smart cities. And it's not just internally where people can come in and utilize the resources, but how can that be done remotely? Currently, everybody works from home.
Right.
So we are currently doing that with our internal staff. It's now engaging persons, and to ensure that, the system to facilitate that is safe, it is speedy, and it is secure, I guess. But it's something that we're open to. We are looking to something called maybe a create space, where that is a physical location that persons can come in, because we do have to upgrade and change out equipment consistently, maybe every 5 years or so.
Right.
You have to subscribe. So that is there. It is just about actioning it now, honestly.
Okay.
But from an internal point of view, we do operate like that. It would just be extending it to our contractors or freelancers or persons in the animation world.
Thank you so much, Tashara. I want to swing it back over to you, Claire. As we begin to get a little deep into the woods, I'd like to hear something about what is TVJ looking at. We talked about the virtualization of sets. We talked about interstitials. Is TVJ looking at motion capture and kind of live animation? Since you will be doing live events, etc., and you will be looking at that kind of a thing, have you considered animation in that kind of space, in that kind of a live event kind of a space?
I mean, we as I said, we've done the investment to look at how we introduce animation into our broadcasting experience.
Right.
It is, for example, why for the elections we were able to do that kind of production. I mean, it making an impact about how animation makes TV sexy. I think that was the ultimate kind of experience. So people got it. Interestingly, first time that we used it, but it was an opportunity for people to just see how this particular use of animation and graphic work via the technology could get you to having something that just had this wow effect, because that's what we want with it from a live production experience. So pretty much if you're able to, you know, you can get a truck to drive through the studio. We laugh, but that's kind of the kind of thing that you want to be able to do with it.
True. Very true. Right.
And so it is, I don't want to say an add-on, but it is how we will utilize this kind of technology and this kind of skill set to put that little oomph on what you TV. I mean, Charles spoke about the fact that, and again, it's important for us to understand, the whole issue of the use of animators has been happening in our industry forever. Lower thirds, montages, that's all the work of good animation. And if you're good at it, you can see it. We have invested quite a bit into that part of our product from a couple of years now, not necessarily a lot of people, but people who kind of get it. And each time we have a major event, if we're doing the Olympics or World Championships or anything like that, you really kind of throw a lot of effort into how you can utilize those skill sets to give the production that extra oomph.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a crucial part of what we do. But to go along the other steps, as I said, we are very, very excited and interested about looking at where the players are now in terms of people who are getting into the business. There is a lot of investment going on with getting people trained. What I worry about is that you're training all of these people and then what?
Right.
Also the fact that you're training them with a notion of 50 US a second. I don't know that 50 US a second is something that happens from here.
Understood.
And if they're having a mindset that I'm worth 50 US a second, if Tashara and Michael and Claire are not paying them 50 US a second, I'm not doing animation.
Right.
It's a real challenge, and it's a real way of us trying to come to terms with, and this is no different from anything else we do generally in our business. So the Super Bowl is going on, and a spot in the Super Bowl for 30 seconds is $4.5 million US for a 30-second spot. That does not mean that I can charge Michael $4.5 million US. So
Understood.
You kind of have to appreciate and get the industry to understand the expectations within this economy, bearing in mind that part of what we want to do is to build the skill set that creates the exportable skill, creates the exportable content, makes us attractive because we have numbers of people. I'm stepping out of animation, but it is important because it is relevant to what we're talking about. So we like to talk about TV as a location, Jamaica as a location for TV, and Jamaica as a location for film, and we have all the skills and we can do all of that. The truth be told, if 3 major movies were to decide to come to Jamaica now, to do 3 movies at the same time, we don't have the capacity to scale it. We don't.
So it's not just a matter of numbers, it's a matter of skilled numbers.
Skilled numbers. So I'm saying capacity because we like to talk about the technical resources. We probably do have technical resources for the most part that might be able to support 3 films going on at the same time. Maybe we do, right? Maybe we do, between all of the players that are in there that have invested. We don't have the actual qualified skills to manage 3 major movies going on in Jamaica at a single time.
I want to
that to the animation industry. It's a similar kind of thing. We have to appreciate that we have to build that skill set.
Right.
That allow us to really get aggressive and participate in certain things.
Thank you so much for that. I want to kind of talk about that entire not necessarily the skill set part, but to go back to the technology and kind of throw it over to Michael. Because what I see is when I look at Flow and its regional network, I get this idea of the business of animation and this idea of syndication. The idea that I can do something in one place and I should be able to lock into this kind of a network that will send it all over the place, right? Again, please, if I get the TV terms wrong, feel free to correct me, guys. But the idea of this kind of a regional syndication of content, Michael, and this is where I believe Flow is best positioned. What would you have to talk about? What would you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, it gets back actually to a lot of the points Claire had raised.
Right.
In that, Greenfield Productions, that's animal in of itself, and all the all the concerns that Claire raised are all true. Now you multiply that by trying to do a regional network, so that is you multiply that. So then all those other concerns are multiplied. Claire raised a lot of points. People are, we are in the Caribbean, we are a small market globally, right? So when I mean, yes, there is opportunity to do things regionally. Totally agree with that. But I think that trying to creating a network or even a greenfield production, there's not a whole lot of return, let's put it that way, in trying to distribute that regionally. So I think our mindset really needs to be, yes, as Claire said, we need to start what we can handle, right? But our outlook should also be globally. Right, as I said, we are a small market. English-speaking Caribbean is only 6 million people, which is not a lot of people. So when we, our ideas really should be, okay, how can I pitch this, globally, in other English-speaking, region, maybe, in New Zealand or
right, right.
And I think we all like talking regionally. I mean. I'm all for regionalism. I'm living in Jamaica for years, but I think that we're a small market, we're a small region, and realistically, there's not a whole lot of return in trying to create these regional networks. So our animators, creators, we yes, develop stuff with the great creative input that we have here, but in terms of distribution, we just try to broaden our perspective on how we think we can distribute and that type of thing. Because at the end of the day, it's a business, and everybody to cover their costs and make money. Everybody has shareholders.
I mean, I think you raise a great point as well, Michael, by pointing out that the English-speaking Caribbean is really, what number did you say it was? I think you said 6 million?
6 million, give or take. Million. I could be wrong, by the way.
Right? No. Around about that ballpark. And I can remember one of the things that when I used to work with people from South Korea, they would say they wouldn't even bother to develop a program if they could not guarantee 5.5 million eyes. And if our entire market is only 6 million, and they're saying they're not going to bother to look at that development if they can't guarantee at least 95% of that, then I mean it creates it better contextualizes the business of it, and as you said, the idea of the return that will come back, and the risk that is involved. You wanted to say something, Claire?
Yeah, there's more to it as well, because it really sounds really nice to say that we're a Caribbean market of 6 million. That's just a figment of everybody's imagination, because yes, we are similar, but we also are very, very different.
Understood.
Michael will know that even in terms of what you're doing, and the lab will know as well, because I believe that they do work with regional clients, They will do something that is for the Jamaican market that cannot fly in Trinidad. It cannot fly in Barbados. It needs to be tweaked completely differently for those spaces, because while we are in one same region, the actual islands have very, very different interpretations and tastes of things.
Right.
Jamaica, for example, constantly, and it's a weird scenario, we will engage with an English accented soap and an English accented person and an American accent and Australian and even African content. But you present them with content from the region and there is, oh, this is Trinidad.
Understood.
That's real. So even when you think about size of market and you have those numbers, Michael will know it does not necessarily mean that he can have a product that is like booming in Trinidad and that he's going to take it and put it on a network that is in Jamaica and it works. They reject it. But the critical point is that, again, for people that are coming into the industry at every level, they need to understand the ecosystem and they need to appreciate the business component of it. So when you start off with a conversation that says, oh, we need a network to distribute it. Michael, you have the infrastructure and the network, can't you distribute it? He's not doing it for the goodness of his heart. He has to figure out a way as to how this, because it's going to cost him to distribute it. So when you're thinking about that, the question is going to be, how does it make sense for him?
Right.
Very easy to say, what do you mean? You just get sponsors, you just get sponsors. That's not quite how it works either. Tasha works with the lab. She has clients. And just because she has clients that have the potential to sponsor does not mean that they're going to take up their money and just give to you because you want to get animation across the region.
Right. But I'm going to have to stick up in right there, though, Ms. Grant, even though it's really, really powerful points and very, very critical, but just with a sense of where we are in the space of today's panel. And I think I'd love to come back to you a little bit later. But I do want to hear from Tashara a little bit about, and no, I think we want to switch it back to about what possibilities for new kinds of content there are and what possibilities for new kinds of content that you're seeing in the marketplace. And I'm thinking that because you're the advertising agency, you probably have a bit of a more direct thumb on the pulse of things. And I've heard where the idea of putting things together and expanding the genres that are available and that are produced locally, because a lot of our artists are producing just one kind of set kind of content. Do you see animated content being able to fill genre expansion gaps? Or is there any kind of animated content, probably maybe even stop motion animation or so on, that you could see a private company jumping into and helping out, and you could see a space for expansion based on the kinds of demands that you're seeing from the advertising world?
I think people say content is king, and it's true. We have a saying here at the lab, which is anything that moves is content. So I think sometimes we overthink what it is and what that can be, but there are opportunities untouched and unlocked here, as well as in the Caribbean. So, I mean, for animation and motion graphics, we spoke to the supers, and it's that development. It's templates that people can use, whether in alpha channels or whatever it is, the technical terms. It's also the lyric videos, which are probably more used now by a lot of artists who opt not to shoot a music video for whatever reason. It's the performances, it's the podcast, and so there is like an array of things that can be channeled through animation that is relevant. On the pulse of things, what we do know is people are tuned in a lot into TV, into the visual content, TV and online. And so content that resonates on either of those platforms are great, but that doesn't mean that everything else is dead. It just means looking at the opportunities that exist far beyond the fully animated cartoon or far beyond the movie and the feature. It could be short films. It could be a lot of things. We tend to say that we're a global company that just happens to be in Jamaica.
Right.
And in our board meetings, our directors reinforce that in our heads, because I think once we start thinking local, we're like, okay, we only have this amount of large clients. Okay, we only have, and everybody competes. So you have digital and flow, you have the banks, and if you get one, you can't get the other. It's just, how do I realize my opportunities outside of the rock? And it does not have to start huge. As Claire said, you really can start small, and there is a myriad of opportunities for animators, I would say.
Okay, great. I do want to, I'm probably being cued by my producer now about time, but there is this one grand idea with regards to how advertising agencies and the skills and the on-deck skills that are at an advertising agency, how the kind of oversight that a TV company allows for, and how the kind of reach that and networking that a telco allows for comes together. And there's been a lot of talk about, Jamaica needs to create a smart city. You mentioned it earlier, the idea of this data-driven space where you'll have lots of user interfaces and a huge focus on user experience. I would love to hear from the three of you, whichever would like to go first, not too long, probably just like a 2-minute comment with regards to, do you see animation playing a role in equipping the kinds of backbone user interface elements and technologies and how animators could work together to bring out stuff for navigation and education? Do you see all of those things filling together to probably work within this smart city concept, and maybe even how each of you could play a role in that kind of a situation?
Well, I would say undoubtedly animation will play a role in smart city development. I know it's something that the government and bigger heads are looking at now, and it requires a lot of investment. For the smart city that I think people are thinking of is everything, lights everywhere, touch, they're thinking big, and it requires a lot of capital investment. I know, for example, and it's just to go a little left, EVs are coming in, which are electric vehicles, and that plays a role in smart city itself. But to go back to your point, yes, for us, for example, and you asked about what areas can be filled, I think, we have different generations that exist within our island. And it's just, yes, you have the younger persons who are probably more tech savvy and can adapt easily, but you do have those persons who are more reserved, not so fond of it, and are afraid for reasons, valid reasons. And I think in our way, in terms of commercializing, what we've been doing, for example, is doing little how-to videos. So how do you, for example, use an app? How do you, it's educating. So there are like a lot of things that will have to happen into getting this jump started or accelerated. It will be educating, it will be, and that can be through how-to videos, which are animated mostly, or motion graphics. It could be in-app videos, for example. So it'll be educating, then probably acclimatizing people, and then having the live engagement and interaction. But it's gonna be phased, and it's definitely gonna be something that has to be gradual. But we all, I think, have different roles to play in it. And I think in terms of commercial and advertising, that is one.
Okay, great. Michael, Claire, which of you would like to go first?
I mean, I would just go back to the point that I'd raised earlier, but I think in terms of the digital experience, it's not only us, it's all businesses, it's government, that want us, want everyone to become more digital. And those interfaces require animation. I mean, yes, of course, everyone can read text, but of course animation makes all these things more compelling. So in a smart city environment where you have all these touch points for various things, the most, one of the easiest ways to communicate something is definitely through animation. So I think, as we start going down the roads of smart cities, digital experiences and so on, I mean, that benefits the industry, because I think, and everybody knows one of the best ways to get a compelling experience in the digital world is through animation.
Thanks, Michael. Over to you to wrap it up, Claire. I think we have about 2 minutes. Claire, I don't think I think you need to unmute.
Yeah, I said certainly it's the way of the future, and it is something that because Jamaica is great on adapting, it's going to happen. I do think the point that Tashara made is important, that the nature of our society has all of these various levels of people: rural, urban, rich, poor, educated, not as educated. That makes the movement slightly different, but it's going to happen. And yes, as it is happening, you're going to get these moments when this particular skill set becomes so important. What I do think is going to be interesting, though, with everything else that we do, I expect Jamaica to put something into it that's going to be slightly different from anything else we've seen across the world, because that's how we adapt. And that's what I'm excited about, to see how we're actually going to be using animation to interface with what we have. And education is an area that I expect that's where it's going to explode first.
Great, thank you guys. Now, as we sign out, Michael, if I wanted to get in touch with somebody to talk about this, the ability to talk about render farms and that kind of a service, who do I reach out to, Michael?
Well, I mean, I am a very good conduit, so I'll put myself out there. I'm not the expert on our networks, but I mean, I can definitely facilitate conversations with that type of project. And I said it's something like that is not impossible. As I said, the backbone is there, the capacity is there. It's just really the platform.
Great. All right. So that's Michael Luktong. If you want to reach out to Flo, over to you, Tashara. If somebody wants to talk about what the lab is doing, probably get involved, maybe even bring you a proposal around that kind of a remote distributed workspace, who do they contact at the lab?
Well, they can contact us via email at info@tpljamaica.com, which is the email we all use, myself, Kimala, and HR, to kind of scout through persons who we go through it regularly, so not to fret. They can also contact myself or call us at 908-4080. Yeah.
Thanks, Tashara. And last but not least, Ms. Grant, somebody has a fantastic idea around a series of 2-minute interstitials, and they want to fill the space that's not filled by advertisements right now, but they want to talk to you about how to do that. Who do they talk to?
Shara is asking what space is that. To be honest, we right now are looking for about 3 spaces that we need filled in our creative department, the graphics department. So we're actually looking for animators now. That's
great.
But we also, in the last 3.5 years, we opened a department called the Homegrown Division. It's a homegrown department, and it is specifically about, looking at what people have out there. We partner with people for projects. We do projects that are 100% ours. I mean, you can send it to me, claire.grant@televisionjamaica.com, or Judith Alberga, who is the one who is the head of the Homegrown department, and she's judith.alberga@televisionjamaica.com.
Thank you. I'm going to kick it back over to Michael one last time, because I just realized that he didn't give us an email address. Michael, what email address should they use?
Yeah, that's probably why I didn't want to confuse people, because I have a very complicated name. It's michael.luktong@cwc.com.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, each and every one of you guys. I mean, I think that the conversation was very insightful. And I think it gave us a good look at what people on the other side, not just the creators that want boss, but the people that are on the other side that are in the business of it are looking for, what kind of opportunities that you see, and what kind of opportunities maybe lying just below the surface that's waiting on somebody to activate. So thank you for your time, and look forward to talking to you again.